All right, time now for our roundtable. The latest batch of Hillary Clinton emails show there may be at least a slight difference between the truth and the former Secretary of State's version of reality. Case in point, Clinton's previous claim that longtime advisor Sidney Blumenthal's emails were largely unsolicited. Turns out Clinton greatly valued input from Blumenthal and asked him to send her at least one email. Actually, a lot more. A great place to bring in our roundtable. With us today, attorney David Goodfriend, also the former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, and Chelsi Henry, attorney and political strategist and business consultant. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, David, let's start with you. According to this new batch of emails, Sidney Blumenthal referred to Hillary as H, sending along daily messages about everything from political gossip to geopolitical advice. Not only that, Clinton responded to Blumenthal saying she shared emails with her husband who thought that they were, quote, brilliant, and she even asked Blumenthal to keep them coming. Now, this is a different story than what we've heard from her in the past regarding Blumenthal. How many cases like this are going to continue to come out where Hillary Clinton says one thing and then turns around and changes her story, or the story changes based on what we see in these emails?
Well, I disagree with your characterization of that. I mean, I think he sent emails constantly, and sometimes she forwarded them to other people saying, what do you think about this? And sometimes she thought it was brilliant. I don't think you're catching her in a gotcha moment here. I will say this. I worked in the White House with Sid Blumenthal. He's a nice fellow, but, I mean, I was in the position where anything the president read or saw came across my desk as Deputy Staff Secretary. And Sid Blumenthal thinks he has to weigh in on everything. I mean, if he was sitting here, I'd tell him this to his face, so I don't think I'm betraying anything. The guy just is insistent that what he has to say is incredibly important and has to be heard by everybody. And sometimes it is, and a lot of times it's not. And I don't think that particularly incriminates or catches Hillary Clinton in a gotcha moment. I just think that the guy is prolific in sending anybody who will listen all of his thoughts. Sometimes they're worth reading.
All right, well, we've all probably worked with somebody like that once upon a time. But when you think about, she said, no, I'm not going to give my server up, then she has to give the server up. We didn't solicit any emails from Sidney Blumenthal. Then she says, send me the article about John Podesta. It's a different story, maybe not a quote-unquote lie, but maybe a half-truth. Chelsi, what do you say?
Definitely can say that it's a half-truth. I mean, she received emails from him. She solicited information. I think at this point, the Clinton campaign should be very nervous. We are in the beginning of what the emails that will be sent out per the monthly release. And so I'm just still wondering what else is in those 30,000 emails. What else was discussed? What else concerning our national security? Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. I mean, what else did she talk about in those emails that concern everyday citizens in their lives? And I'm just not convinced that the fact that she had to have this court order to release her emails shows the American people that they can be confident in her as the next president of the United States.
David, going back to what we were talking about at the onset of the roundtable here, I don't think we're looking at a kind of gotcha moment or the big smoking gun issue or catching Clinton red-handed in anything. I just think it kind of goes against and continues to affect her trustworthiness with the American public. When you look back at what she said at the United Nations at the onset of this email issue and to what she's saying now, and no, we didn't solicit any information from Blumenthal, and now according to a report from NBC's Chuck Todd, Bill Clinton is annoyed that more party surrogates have not come to Hillary's defense. And this is what the report says. Members of Congress and others want to help them, being the Clintons, but they don't know how, and they're not getting much help from the Clinton campaign. And I think this goes back to what I've talked about before, is Hillary Clinton just doesn't seem to be able to address the issue and make it all go away.
Well, it certainly won't go away if Fox and Newsmax keep bringing it up, but we'll keep talking about it. And I'll tell you this much.
It should go away. It should not go away.
Well, right, of course. I mean, you'd rather talk about this than the fact that Hillary Clinton outpolls all the Republicans, or the fact that she beats them on the issues of education, immigration, and economic growth.
Yeah, but at this point in the polls in 2007, she was also outpolling everybody, including Barack Obama. I mean, I think the issue...
Okay, let's talk about that. No, that's a great thing to talk about. So back in 2007, when she was outpolling Barack Obama, and then everybody was surprised when he went from 30 points behind to winning in Iowa, I think that was a real story. Now let's contrast that with today. Today you've got Bernie Sanders, who's done better than anybody expected, but has sort of hit a ceiling. He'll probably win, I think he'll win New Hampshire, because it's a neighboring state. But the real wild card here is Joe Biden, right? We're all wondering whether or not Joe Biden gets into the race. And let's play that one out. So even if Hillary gets a plurality of the votes, meaning not a majority, but a plurality in South Carolina and the southern big Tuesday states, and in Iowa and some of the other primary states, I mean, the math is really in her favor, particularly with the superdelegates now lining up behind her. So yes, the story of the emails persists. I think that's a given. And yes, there was a story back in 2007 when she went from really high up in the polls to being beaten by Barack Obama. But I think if we take apart the numbers in the primary states and how the polling is reflected today, because everybody knows who Joe Biden is, everybody in these primary states has had a chance to meet Bernie Sanders, the numbers still seem to overwhelmingly favor Hillary Clinton getting the nomination. Now, that could always change.
Of course, and it might change. And I think, you know, the difference in the race this year is we're seeing the lack of depth in the Democratic bench in terms of presidential candidates. Chelsi, we got about 20 seconds before we got to take a commercial break, but we got more coming up in the roundtable. Last word to you.
Listen, David, at the end of the day, this is the person running for the United States of America, to be the president of the United States of America. What she did during her previous office does matter. These emails matter, and how she conducted herself is important for the people who may one day vote for her.
All right, guys, we'll leave it there for the time being. Much more ahead. Chelsi and David, please do stick around. Coming up in the next part of the roundtable, we're going to talk more about Pope Francis's new policy in the Catholic Church, and we might get to that. We also want to talk about the ongoing battle between Jeb and Trump. Some new ads out there on the intertubes. We're coming back. All right, we'll get back to our roundtable in 1 second, but before we do, we just want to mention our special offer again right now. You can get Ben Carson's book, One Nation, for free. All you have to do is pay shipping, which is $4.95. You'll also receive 3 trial issues of Newsmax magazine and 2 trial issues of Health Radar at no additional cost. All told, that's a $50 value. Just call 1-800-485-4350 right now. That's 1-800-485-4350, or visit newsmax.com/Ben to get that offer. Also, real quickly, we want to update you guys. We mentioned that there was that police murder in just outside of Chicago. We had reported that one suspect had been taken into custody. Doesn't appear that's the case. The manhunt continues. Let's get back to Chelsi Henry and David Goodfriend. Guys, thanks for sticking around with us. Let's talk a little Jeb versus Trump. Things are heating up. I said intertubes before. That was a little Ted Stevens, Senator from Alaska joke. Google it if you don't know. David, you know what I'm talking about. Meantime,
I do. It's like dump trucks in a series of
tubes. One of the greatest C-SPAN moments of all time. Donald Trump has a new ad out. Some folks are comparing it to the Willie Horton ad of the previous Bush HW, taking on Michael Dukakis. It takes on Jeb Bush on his act of love comment. Let's take a listen.
Yes, they broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's kind of it's an act of love.
All right, you get the overwrought piano music. Let that one soak in for a second. Now let's take a look at Jeb's ad taking on Trump's conservatism, or perhaps lack thereof.
Partial birth abortion.
I'm very pro-choice. I am pro-choice in every respect, and as far as it goes.
As far as single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland.
But the fact is that 25% for high-income people, it should be raised substantially.
Do you identify more as a Democrat or a Republican?
Well, you'd be shocked if I said that in many cases I probably identify more as a Democrat.
All right, so let's start with the Bush taking on Trump ad. David, do you think that these sound bites are going to come back to haunt Trump? Because a lot of the stuff, you know, he talked about it in the first debate, the single-payer system. We knew the stuff was out there. It hasn't affected him yet.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think it's going to be terribly effective, because in a way it almost underscores the meme of Trump as the uncandidate.
Right.
What Donald Trump has done so effectively, I think, is position himself as something utterly different from what you would expect in a Republican primary. And that has led a lot of people to sort of snap to attention and like him and support him, even if they disagree with him on some things. You know, I think increasingly very few voters are single-issue voters. You could disagree with a candidate on one or a number of issues, but still like them enough in what they stand for that you vote for them. And I think that's the problem that Jeb Bush has right now. He's trying to take a more traditional line of attack against the leading candidate by saying, look at all these things he has said. Isn't that crazy? Well, I mean, Donald Trump would turn around and say, you know, everybody looks at me and says, what I say is crazy, but I'm right. And I think people respond to that, particularly folks in the Republican Party who are tired of machine politics.
Yeah, and tired of the Bush name. Now, Chelsi, this is something Jeb Bush could have done a long time ago. He clearly did not want to engage with Donald Trump. Is this too little, too late?
No, I think that is actually perfect timing, because as we look at the landscape, I mean, we still have, 17 Republican candidates in, and Jeb is in for the long haul. So when we look at Donald Trump, a question that many political insiders wonder is he still really serious about wanting to become president of the United States? And so what you see in this ad from Jeb is he's saying, look, you say that you are Republican, you're trying to tap into the Republican base, trying to tap into the conservatives, which you may right now be in the polls, but let's talk about the issues. And so with that, yes, many voters may not be single issue voters, but when they look at and continue to learn more about what Donald Trump has stood for and what he stands for, and the fact that he's a Democrat and has supported Democrats, I think that we may see a turn in the polls. But it's up to Jeb and these other candidates to say, hey, this front runner is not really the person who you think he is. He's not really a conservative.
All right. We want to talk a little bit, too, about the Pope. A big announcement coming today from the Vatican. The Pope says he's going to allow priests to forgive women who have had abortions. We see this Pope moving in a pretty progressive direction when we compare him to other popes. How big of an impact do you think he's going to have on the presidential race here in this country when he visits at the end of this month? David, go ahead.
Well, there are tens of millions of Catholic voters in the United States, but not all of them vote because the pontiff has said to vote one way or another. I think we have to be careful to make the sweeping conclusion that because the Pope says something, that Catholic voters will in turn follow suit. I don't believe that.
But more the conversation, I think he'll have an impact on the conversation for sure. What do you think, Chelsi?
Yeah, I want to be careful to make that first point. And now let's move on to the sort of issues that he has raised. I think personally that this is one of the most consequential popes in modern history. And the reason I say that is because he is taking the papacy as what I would call activist, a kind of activist or liberation theology style.
Well, David, we can talk more about that when the Pope visits in a month. Unfortunately, Chelsi, we're out of time here. We'll have you back, of course, and get your take as well. But he will have a significant impact, at least on the conversation in the political realm in the short term. Chelsi Henry, David Goodfriend, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
For having us.